Hey, nonprofit fundraisers, Nick Mikhalevsky with the Giving Block here, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Crypto Philanthropy, where we highlight the top giving news, stories, and the power of crypto for good. I'm flying solo today. My colleague Pietro Moran is out in the field. So, with that, why don't we just jump right into today's topics? We have a few things that we have queued up for you. As always, we're going to be doing a crypto price check. Take a look at the markets real quick. We're going to be taking a look at the donation stats of the last 7 days. Lots of crypto industry news to go over, but don't worry, we're just going to be highlighting a few of the largest news items. We're not going to get too deep on this, and then just really want to get to common crypto 101 questions. We talk to nonprofits every single day. Oftentimes, they're asking some very similar questions. So just thought I'd capture some of the most common for the audience today. So with that, why don't we jump right in and see what's been going on? As always, we have our $500 in Bitcoin when you get started with the Giving Block. Again, great way to kickstart your crypto philanthropy journey with us. So if you want, scan that QR code to get connected to our team. And so lots of green in the chart today. Crypto industry has been on a big advance, certainly over the last few weeks with the turnover of the new administration. It's been a little bit more favorable to crypto in general. We'll talk about some of that on the news later in the deck. But right now, as of the time of this recording, Bitcoin a little bit over $104,000, ETH at 3,200, almost 33, and taking a look at some of those other major assets. Solana seeing a pretty big advance over the weekend. So all in all, a pretty strong move in the crypto space, and it's translating into some pretty impactful gifts. So, with that, why don't we take a look at what we've been seeing over the past week? And it's another really, healthy week, and especially for January. I mean, to have, 500,000, in crypto donations in January is something that it's a trend we started to see, a little bit more and more during those bull runs. Sometimes, donors are making certainly a lot of those gifts at year end, but they're also making some gifts in January if they want to take both of those tax years and just kind of get them done. So maybe there's something to that. Aside from crypto as well, stock and DApp donations exceeding $250,000 in the last week, and we've started to see those uptick. And as you mentioned, that strength in Solana nearly surpassed Bitcoin for the most donated asset. Again, just fell short. So it was a really strong showing from Solana. Maybe it's something we'll continue to see, but again, it's not just, goes to show you that you want to have that really versatile tool in the toolkit. So if you're out there, accepting a variety of crypto assets, having a large list also provides ease for donors, so they don't have to go through the need to swap from one crypto to another. Of course, when you do that, that is a taxable event. So it kind of takes much of the tax incentive, if you're in jurisdictions where there isn't tax incentive to do that, out of the equation, or the tax incentive for giving in general. So pretty interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. But again, Bitcoin, we think, is still going to be the runaway leader, for 2025. A lot of tailwinds for, the crypto industry in general. So we'll keep an eye on things and see how that goes. But if we add up everything, all the non-cash assets together, we're looking at around, 700,000 in weekly giving from supporters across the crypto industry to hundreds of charities. So a really strong week. Talking to a lot of nonprofits that have now come out of that busy year-end season. They're taking a look at priorities for 2025, and they definitely want to have crypto as one of those top priorities to dig deeper into, or to get started with, in the first place. So great, strong week. January, always tends to be a bit of a stronger month, and we'll see how that plays out with everything that's been happening in the crypto industry. So moving on to our next slide here, some of the news that's come out. I mean, no question, the biggest kind of theme so far is just the different stance that the government is taking to the crypto industry in general. The crypto industry is now operating in a friendlier environment. That's going to translate to some clear rules of the road from the regulatory perspective. And for a lot of surveys that have been coming out, we've started to see, and this is a sort of, I'm speaking about financial industry, crypto industry surveys that have been done by a variety of crypto industry professionals. We've started to see that sort of regulatory clarity as one of those barriers start to tick down a little bit, and some optimism that there are going to be some clear rules of the road, some more friendlier regulations, maybe some less onerous rules, or just clear rules in general. There's big optimism that some of the vagueness that made it hard to sort of operate in the space is now going to be having some welcomed clarity for the first time. So new stance on the industry in general, and of course how that translates to the wider financial markets. We've been seeing the traditional markets and the crypto markets start to blend more and more together, and we think 2025 is going to be not just a continuation of that, but I think a real acceleration. So to the point around what advisors are hearing, and for millions of investors out there that are becoming more crypto curious, now that there's a more regulated way to engage with the space. One of the leaders in the space, we'll put a link to this in the show notes. Bitwise does an annual financial advisor survey, and it shows a real strong client interest into crypto in general. There's a lot of great stats in there, but one of the ones that was key was 96% of financial advisors were asked about crypto by their clients in the last year. So, I mean, if that isn't an indication of what is on people's minds, which could then, again, we've said this before in previous shows, more and more investors are working with financial advisors, and the level of tax guidance and charitable considerations that are going to go along with the fact that they have a professional steward that can now talk to them about crypto assets and exposure and what that means for their portfolio, is going to translate into those giving opportunities. But interestingly enough, also in that survey, I think there was another stat there that also showed that a lot of investors are making investments in crypto outside of the financial advisor relationship. Now, some of that kind of makes sense because it's still early on. Not every wirehouse, not every broker has this all turned on. Things take time to move through the compliance team, the legal teams, the regulatory team. So, there certainly have been some first movers in the space. Firms like Bitwise are, crypto native, so they were already in the space. But as this, sort of permeates out to all of those other major brokerages, it's also really interesting to hear that if the clients aren't asking about it, they're already dabbling in the space. They're already making those investments. So expect that to all get folded in as more and more of these financial advisors, wealth managers have more of those tools in their toolkit. Of course, continuing on with the sort of traditional financial market space. Actually, if we go back one slide, Bitcoin ETFs turn 1 year old as well. And if for a quick reminder, I mean, the Bitcoin ETFs were a new financial instrument that the SEC gave approval to last year, and it was the best performing exchange traded product that has ever been launched in the history of financial markets. So those ETFs have just turned 1 year old, and there's now long-term capital gains advantages that have now kicked in for donors who held on, or investors who held on to that asset over the last year. So they're just in that much more of an advantage position now. And one of the many Bitcoin ETFs that launched, BlackRock Their IBIT ETF, I think, was up over 100% year over year. So, investors that weighed in on that asset certainly have a lot of tax optimized gains that they could offset this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an increase in stock giving due to those ETFs. And there's been I think currently there's about $122 billion that have been invested in that spectrum of ETF categories. So significant amount of assets there, and if organizations are equipped to accept those assets, I think they'll do very well this year. And then the last bullet point here, kind of continuing that BlackRock theme, there's the annual Davos meeting that's going on. Again, BlackRock being the world's largest asset manager, they, people tend to listen to, what they're thinking and hearing and saying. And Larry Fink, who is the CEO of BlackRock, said that he was having conversations this week with sovereign wealth funds that are considering a 2 to 5% allocation into Bitcoin. And this is something that, has been speculated could happen at some point in the future. But I think people are actually getting, I don't want to necessarily say caught off guard, but are being somewhat surprised that they're starting to see such big allocations, such big moves so rapidly. I think people kind of knew that this was coming on the timeline at some point, but pretty interesting that we're already seeing some of these things take place, and we're starting to see some pension funds make some modest allocations. So this combined with some news around potential quote unquote strategic Bitcoin reserves that are floating around the industry. There's about 12 US states that have submitted legislation. And of course, there's the potential for some other executive orders or, including a national strategic Bitcoin reserve that's being discussed. So, 2025 could be a very consequential year for the crypto industry and reshaping financial markets. So it's going to be a really interesting space. And again, how this sort of translates into giving, of course, is certainly going to be correlated as this enters more and more financial portfolios across a wide variety of investors. So a lot to keep an eye on. The news is moving really fast, so I would not be surprised if on future episodes the crypto industry news starts to become a little bit more of a frequent update. Again, we want to keep things a little bit high level. We don't want to go too deep into the weeds here, but these are just some important things to know. So if you're a nonprofit listening to this, the sort of summary here is that, hey, this crypto thing isn't going away. In fact, it's just going to become more and more part of everyday life, and mass adoption is increasing pretty rapidly. So just be in the space. So with that, we are talking to a lot of nonprofits that are saying, hey, 2025, we want to get off the sidelines. Our board is asking us to take a look at this, but there's really kind of a couple main things that we're seeing. On the one hand, we have organizations that say, hey, I know I want to be in the space. It's time for us to take a serious look at this. What should we do? But interestingly, or I guess not maybe too unsurprisingly, there are also a lot of nonprofits who are getting those inbound requests from crypto, donors that are saying, hey, if, can you take this asset? I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $60,000 I'd like to give if you can take it. So we're seeing an increase in those, questions from nonprofits saying, hey, I've got a crypto gift. How do we do this? So before we kind of get to that, and you can see some of the more common questions that are on the screen here. I'm going to run through these. I try to keep it to 5. Certainly there's a lot more. If folks are listening to this, they could probably think of, many other questions to add to this list, but these were kind of I think a good kind of crypto 101 sort of entry point. So number one there, do I need a crypto wallet? Yes, you do. You need a place for your cryptocurrency to land. So think of a crypto wallet like a brokerage account, right? When you are taking stocks, those stocks are transferred to a brokerage account. They're then liquidated for cash. we're doing the same thing here. Yes, you need a crypto wallet. That's all part of the setup process. So you don't need to go out and do this before coming to the Giving Block. When you work with a Giving Block, we help you get that set up. It's something that you own, not the Giving Block. So it's all in your name. Again, it has to be in your name anyway for the tax advantages. So again, speaking, again about a U.S.-based nonprofit, U.S.-based 501c3, right? You need that wallet in the organization's name. So, yep, really easy to do. In a matter of days, we can have this set up. So it's not a very long, complicated process at all. What happens to the crypto we receive? So here's a really important thing. A lot of times, for nonprofits that want to get in the space, maybe you have someone on the finance team that is maybe just concerned about, whoa, wait a minute. Like, we are not equipped to handle digital assets. We're not equipped to handle exotic assets that we don't really understand. The good news here is, again, much like stock donations, we're just automatically liquidating for US dollars, just like you already do with stocks. So if you've been comfortable taking stocks, or if taking stocks is a very comfortable thing, crypto is no different. It's the exact same rules. It's the exact same process. The IRS classifies crypto as a property asset, just like stocks. People want to give it because, again, they have appreciated gains that they have to offset. So we're just liquidating for cash. It's just plain old USD. So you're not investing in crypto. You're not transacting in crypto. That's not what's going to your bank. It's just plain old US dollars. I guess as an asterisk, we've been receiving the question a little bit more and more of, if I do want to hold crypto, is that a possibility? And yes, it is. And we have capabilities to liquidate, which is what 99% of our clients do. Or if you want to hold, we have capabilities to do that too. So number 3, a donor is asked to donate crypto. What should I ask them? So this is probably one of the key benefits of working with a Giving Block. And, oftentimes we talk to nonprofits saying, hey, someone said they want to donate crypto. And our first question is, great. What asset is it? And, how much? And I don't know. I have to go and ask. And that's a really important question. There are also some other important questions that you may haven't even thought to ask. And we are crypto experts. We live, breathe, and eat this stuff. So there are likely many considerations that you haven't even thought of. Or what do you do in the case where a donor has some really specific questions, really specific asks, and they're saying things that sound completely like way over your head? It's like, I don't even understand what they're talking about. They got this token and it's, I don't even understand what they're talking about in terms of like wallets and swaps. And I'm just throwing out some random crypto jargon here, but all to say that our team is precisely designed for these questions so that A, you don't have to worry about it. B, you know what to say back to the donor, so we can help you with any of those considerations. Or C, we can even step in and you could tell the donor, hey, we have a partner here that helps us with our crypto donations, the Giving Block. I would like to introduce you to their team. They'll help you walk through, this entire process. Number 4, are there tax advantages to donating? Should I ask them to sell first and then donate? Yes. So in the US, there are some big tax advantages. Again, it's just why people donate stock or why they put money into a DAF. There's no special tax rules for crypto. It follows the exact same rules for any other appreciated asset. So it's a way for donors to offset their capital gains. So they get a great tax break for donating the crypto, tax-free for the nonprofit. So definitely don't want to have someone sell those assets first. So again, if you're sort of thinking like, well, I don't know, maybe I don't want to necessarily touch the crypto. I should just tell the donor, hey, go liquidate it and then just send the proceeds to us in cash. Definitely don't want to do that, because if someone's donating, say, $1 million in crypto, and we were processing a lot of those 7-figure gifts at year end just a couple weeks ago, if someone is selling that asset, they could be, they could wake up to a huge $100,000 tax bill. So again, much easier and much better for the donor to, donate that asset rather than liquidating it first. So again, we have all kinds of great content to help folks understand the benefits of doing that. and also how to educate your donors on what the advantages are. A lot of times, everybody is certainly surprised at how much crypto they have in their network. They've just not asked, or donors just haven't been aware. And to continue on that, donors haven't been aware. Sometimes donors don't even know the implications and the benefits for doing that, especially younger donors who haven't maybe traditionally worked with a financial advisor. That's a great way to sort of educate donors and saying, hey, if you're taking profits in crypto and you rather not pay a big fee to the IRS, consider making a donation here to offset that gain and support a cause you really care about and realize some of those profits you had this year in the crypto space. And probably 5, does a donor need an appraisal? So a little bit of a more deeper question. So currently for anybody donating over $5,000, they need to submit an IRS Form 8283. They need a qualified appraisal for this donation. Now, it's a little bit of a, dare I say, like a wonky rule because there's already a carve out for that exists in stock. So you don't need to get this appraisal for stock because there's publicly available information. You can easily see, what that the value of that transaction is with publicly available data. Crypto operates the same way, but there just hasn't been a rule put in place that has the same kind of carve out for crypto that already exists in stock. So until that time, donors do have to go through an appraisal process. But again, at the Giving Block, we've got everything taken care of so we can walk a donor through what that process is, all the ins and outs. We make it really easy. And so it's certainly not something that a donor needs to be surprised with. So definitely talk about that. But I guess to sum everything up, oftentimes when we start these conversations, there could be a temptation from nonprofits to treat these donations kind of like they're one-offs. Like, oh, this is really interesting. But we've not really marketed it. We don't really know if we're going to be in the space. Why don't we just process this one-time gift and leave? Again, as we said, in sort of the beginning of the episode here, this is something that is entering more and more portfolios every single month. There's 50, 60, 70 million Americans that have cryptocurrency. So it's something that, again, you don't want to treat as just sort of like a one-off. And the organizations that are outperforming, irrespective of size, doesn't matter if you're the world's largest NGO or you're a local grassroots organization that is just serving a specific local community, the ones that are outperforming and are seeing huge, dependable, diversified, funding, and by opening this new door to crypto donors and growing their major gifts program tremendously and are stewarding the next generation of modern donors, are the ones that are incorporating this into all of their regular giving. So they're making sure crypto is an option across all of the channels that they're already operating in. So don't treat crypto as a one-off. It's not going anywhere. You want to have this in your fundraising program, and we've got all the tools to help make you really successful in that endeavor. So with that, that's going to just about do it for today's episode. A little bit shorter, but we'll look forward to being back soon with you next week. We've got a lot of great guests that are lined up here. We'll be talking about more success stories, more donor stewardship. We're going to get deeper into that crypto tax question. Of course, we've got tax time coming up. So we'll make sure to give everybody all the information they need to sail through that annual fun. But with that, thanks so much for joining, everybody, and we will see you next week.